Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at customizable math apps for teaching.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, and we found this really fascinating website that details a workshop run by the Educational Technology Division of the Singapore Ministry of Education.
Okay.
So think of it like we're going to be taking a deep dive into, how these apps are being used to make math a little bit more interactive and fun for students.
What's really cool about these apps is that they're customizable.
Yeah.
They're not like a prepackaged, solution. They're designed to be tailored to the specific needs of the students.
Oh, that's really cool. So let's back up a little bit and talk about the workshop.
Sure.
So the website calls it Exploring Customizable Math Apps, and it seems to be aimed primarily at primary school math teachers.
Yes, that's right. And the goal of this workshop is to show how these apps can help students understand abstract math concepts in a fun and engaging way.
And, you mentioned customization. The website mentions 3 tools for modifying these apps. There's the easy JavaScript modeling tool, DudaMath and GeoGebra.
Mm.
Does that mean that teachers need to be coding whizzes to use these apps?
That's a really good question.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like you need to know a little bit about coding to unlock the full potential of these apps, but it's not like you have to be a full-fledged programmer or anything.
Yeah.
It's more like being able to tweak existing features to better fit your teaching style and the needs of your students.
So you're not necessarily building the app from scratch.
Right.
You're
It's
just
fine-tuning it, exactly.
fine-tuning it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah,
Do they have any concrete examples of how these apps work in practice?
they do. In the workshop, they walk through several examples, and one app that they highlight is called Primary School Numbers from 1 to 100.
Okay.
And it focuses on teaching fundamental number concepts like odd and even numbers, multiples, and factors.
So instead of just memorizing definitions from a textbook, students are actually interacting with these concepts in a more visual way.
Yeah, you got it. So imagine a grid of numbers from 1 to 100 on the screen. And as the student explores the grid, all the even numbers light up.
Wow.
So it highlights that pattern visually.
That's a really powerful way to visualize it. I mean, that's a much different experience than just staring at a textbook.
Absolutely.
What other apps are they showcasing? Do they have anything that covers more complex topics?
They do. They highlight another app called a mass or weighing scale model. And this app helps students to understand measurement in decimals, so you can actually add different weights to the scale, adjust the units of measurement, and then see how the decimal values on the scale change in response.
So instead of just reading about decimals, they're actually manipulating them and seeing how they work.
That's it.
That's very cool.
Yes, and it takes those abstract concepts and makes them tangible.
I bet that makes a big difference, especially for students who have a hard time with those concepts.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And in the workshop, they actually take this hands-on approach even further. The participants actually brainstorm ideas and features for the app developers to add.
Wow, so they're directly involved
Yeah.
in shaping the tools.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
It is.
I also noticed that this website has a massive list of other math resources.
Oh, yeah.
It's like they have everything
Right.
from virtual manipulatives to online games. It's amazing.
They have tons of resources. They have them categorized as natural fit tools, things like GeoGebra and Desmos, virtual manipulatives, tools for collaboration and communication, formative assessment tools, and online games.
I'm really interested in those virtual manipulatives.
Yeah.
What's the advantage of using a virtual version versus a physical manipulatives in the classroom?
Well, the virtual manipulatives offer a few advantages. They're very versatile. You can easily manipulate them, change their attributes, even duplicate them, which isn't always possible with a physical object.
So you're not
So-
limited by the physical constraints of the object.
Exactly. And, they can be more engaging for some students because sometimes they include interactive features, animations, and sound effects
Right.
that bring those concepts to life.
That makes sense, especially for students who are more digitally inclined.
Yes, and then you have the practicality factor.
Right.
You don't have to worry about losing pieces or having to store bulky materials or cleaning up after a lesson.
Right.
Everything is neatly contained in the digital environment.
It makes me wonder if these virtual manipulatives could eventually replace physical ones altogether.
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
While virtual manipulatives do have a lot of benefits, I still think there's value in students experiencing the mathematical concepts through physical objects. It's about finding the right balance and using both types of manipulatives to enhance learning.
Right, so it's not about replacing one with the other.
Exactly.
It's about having more options.
Yes, giving teachers and students more options.
I like that. And speaking of options, did you notice that the website really emphasizes these open source resources? Can you explain what that means for those of us who aren't necessarily tech savvy?
Yeah, open source means that the underlying code of the software is freely available for anyone to use, modify, and distribute.
Okay.
And in the context of these math apps, it means that teachers aren't just passive consumers of technology. They can actually be active participants in shaping and improving these tools.
So it's about empowering teachers to customize these apps to fit their needs
Yes.
and even share their modifications with others.
Exactly. Imagine a global community of math teachers collaborating to improve these open source apps, sharing their tweaks and creating new features and translating them into different languages.
That's really the power of open source, isn't it?
It is.
It takes collaborative learning to a whole other level, and it sounds like this website isn't just promoting specific apps and tools, but it's also fostering this broader culture of collaboration and innovation in math education.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they do this by including links to other workshops, presentations, and research projects related to integrating technology into math education.
Huh.
So you can tell that they're not just interested in promoting specific products, they're trying to start a movement.
It's like they're saying, here are some amazing tools, but don't just take our word for it.
Right.
Explore, experiment, and become part of this growing community of educators who are passionate about using technology to transform math learning.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And that's what I think makes this website so compelling. It's not just information, it's inspiration.
Yeah.
It's about challenging traditional notions of math education
Uh,
and inviting teachers to become pioneers in this exciting new landscape.
I like that. It's really inspiring to see all this energy and creativity that's going into math education.
It really is. It definitely challenges that stereotype of math being, dry and boring.
It really does.
Yeah.
So let's go back to those app examples that we were discussing earlier and maybe dive a little deeper into how they actually work.
Oh, okay, sure.
We talked about that primary school numbers from 1 to 100 app.
Right.
The one that helps to teach those fundamental number concepts. Can you walk us through how that actually works in practice?
Sure. So it uses a really effective visual approach.
Yeah.
Imagine you're a student and you see this grid of numbers from 1 to 100 on your screen.
Okay.
And let's say you're learning about even numbers. As you explore that grid, all of the even numbers light up.
Uh-huh.
So they highlight that pattern visually.
So it's not just about memorizing a definition, it's actually seeing it.
Right, you're seeing the concept in action.
Yeah.
And it's not just even numbers. It can be customized to focus on odd numbers, multiples, factors, any of those concepts.
Wow.
And the student can interact with the grid test, out different numbers, and see the results in real time.
That's neat.
Yeah, it kind of turns math into a game of discovery.
Yeah, it reminds me of those light, bright toys that we had as kids,
I love that analogy.
but with a mathematical twist.
Exactly. And just like with a light bright, you can create all sorts of patterns and designs.
Yeah.
But in this case, you're creating patterns of numbers, which helps students develop a deeper understanding of those core concepts.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this visually engaging app for teaching basic number concepts.
Right.
What about that other app that you mentioned, the mass or weighing scale model? That one sounded really intriguing. How does that help students grasp measurement and decimals?
So that app is all about bringing those abstract concepts to life. Imagine a virtual weighing scale on your screen, and you can add different weights to either side of that scale. Adjust the units of measurement, grams, kilograms, pounds, and you can see how those decimal values on the scale change in response to that.
So instead of just reading about decimals in a textbook, they're actually getting to manipulate them
Yes,
and see how they work.
They can experiment with different combinations of weights, see how decimals relate to fractions,
Wow.
and even try to balance the scale by adding specific decimal values.
That's really cool. It's a much more hands-on, interactive way to learn than just memorizing rules.
It is, and the beauty of it is that you can tailor the app to focus on the specific decimal concepts that you're covering in class. You can adjust the level of difficulty, you can set challenges for students, and you can even create problem-solving scenarios that require them to apply their knowledge of decimals.
So it's like having a virtual math lab right there on your computer.
It is, and I bet it makes decimals a lot less intimidating for students.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've been focusing on these specific apps,
Right.
but I kind of want to zoom out for a minute and talk about the bigger picture. We mentioned before that this workshop is part of a broader movement towards more innovative math education. What are some of the key trends that are driving that movement?
Well, one of the biggest trends is the shift toward personalized learning.
Okay.
We're moving away from that one-size-fits-all approach to teaching and recognizing that every student learns differently.
Makes sense.
And technology is playing a key role in that shift, allowing us to create learning experiences that are tailored to individual needs and learning styles.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We don't expect all students to learn to read at the same pace or in the same way.
Right.
Why should math be any different?
Exactly. And these customizable apps are a perfect example of how technology can be used to personalize math learning.
Yeah.
Teachers can adjust the difficulty level, the types of problems, the pace of instruction, all to match the needs of their students.
Another trend that we've kind of touched on is that emphasis on hands-on, inquiry-based learning.
Yes.
These apps are really different from that traditional model of math education, which often involved a lot of rote memorization and just passive listening.
Absolutely. These apps encourage students to actively engage with mathematical concepts,
Mm.
to experiment, to explore, to make mistakes and learn from them.
Mm.
It's a much more constructivist approach to learning, where students are actively constructing their own understanding rather than passively absorbing information.
And that focus on active learning really goes hand in hand with the use of technology.
It does.
These apps provide a really safe and engaging space for students to explore mathematical concepts without that fear of failure.
Right.
They can try different approaches, make mistakes, get immediate feedback, all without feeling judged or embarrassed.
That's such an important point because we often forget how much anxiety math can provoke in students. And these apps can help to create a more positive and supportive learning environment
Yeah.
where students feel empowered to take risks and make mistakes.
So it's not just about the technology itself.
Right.
It's about how that technology is being used to create a more effective learning experience.
Exactly. And that brings us to another key trend in this movement, the emphasis on collaboration and community.
Right. We talked about the open source nature of a lot of these apps,
Yes.
which allows teachers to share their modifications and collaborate on improving those tools.
Right.
But it goes beyond just the apps themselves, doesn't it?
It does. This workshop is just one example of a much broader effort to build a community of practice around innovative math education. There are online forums, conferences, professional development workshops,
Oh.
all dedicated to sharing ideas, resources, and best practices.
It seems like a really vibrant and supportive community.
It is, and that sense of community is so important, especially for teachers who are trying to implement these new approaches in their classrooms.
Right.
They can connect with other educators who are facing similar challenges, share their successes and failures, and learn from each other's experiences.
It's like they have a built-in support system for navigating this new landscape of math education.
Exactly, and that's what's so exciting about this movement.
Yeah.
It's not just about technology, it's about people. It's about passionate educators coming together to create a better future for math learning.
And it's not just limited to one particular country or region. This website highlights resources and initiatives from all over the world.
Yes, it's truly a global movement.
It really is, and that's what I think gives me so much hope.
We did.
We're seeing this collective effort to transform math learning, to make it more engaging, more relevant, and more accessible to all students.
Yes.
It's a really inspiring movement to be a part of. As we've been talking about these trends, I've been thinking about the role of assessment in all of this.
Okay.
Traditionally, math assessments have really focused on rote memorization and procedural fluency.
Right.
But how do we assess deeper understanding and problem-solving skills in this more hands-on, inquiry-based approach?
That is a crucial question,
Yeah.
and it's one that a lot of educators are grappling with as we shift towards these more innovative approaches to math teaching.
Yeah.
We need to develop new assessment tools and strategies that can accurately measure students' conceptual understanding, their problem-solving abilities, their ability to communicate their mathematical thinking, and their ability to apply math in real-world contexts.
So it's not just about changing how we teach math.
It's about changing how we assess it as well.
It sounds like there's still a lot of work to be done in this area.
There is. But the good news is that there are a lot of educators and researchers out there who are working to develop new and innovative approaches to math assessment.
Okay.
We're seeing a move away from those traditional standardized tests and towards more authentic assessments that allows students to demonstrate their understanding in more meaningful ways.
That's encouraging. It sounds like the future of math education is headed in a really positive direction.
I think so. It's not just about improving math scores or test results. It's about fostering a love of learning about empowering students to see themselves as capable mathematicians and equipping them with the skills they need to thrive in a world that's increasingly driven by data and technology.
On that note, I'm curious to hear more about the impact these innovative approaches are having on students.
Sure.
Are we seeing any evidence that they're actually leading to deeper understanding and better learning outcomes?
That's a great question, and the research is starting to emerge that suggests that these approaches are having a positive impact. Studies have shown that students who engage in inquiry-based, hands-on math learning tend to develop a deeper conceptual understanding of mathematical concepts.
Hmm.
They're better able to solve problems, communicate their thinking, and apply math in real-world situations.
That's great news. So it sounds like these innovative approaches aren't just trendy fads.
No,
They're actually backed by
they
evidence.
are, and as more and more teachers adopt these approaches, and as more research is conducted, we'll gain an even better understanding of their effectiveness and how to implement them in a way that really maximizes student learning.
Okay, so we've talked about the apps themselves,
Yes.
the trends that are driving this movement towards innovative math education, the importance of assessment,
Yeah.
and the evidence that's supporting these approaches. But I want to bring it back to you, our listener.
Yeah.
What can you take away from all of this? How can you apply these ideas, whether you're a teacher, a parent, or just someone who's interested in the future of math education?
That's a great question. First and foremost, I think it's important to remember that math doesn't have to be dry, boring, or intimidating. It can be engaging, exciting, and accessible to everyone.
I love that. You know, we often internalize those negative messages about math from our own childhoods,
We do.
and we end up passing those beliefs on to the next generation. But it doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't. We need to start by challenging our own assumptions about math and
Yeah.
embracing the idea that everyone can be a mathematician.
And how can we do that?
Well, there's so many ways. If you're a teacher, explore some of the resources that we've talked about in this deep dive. Experiment with those customizable apps, try out some virtual manipulatives, connect with other educators who are doing really innovative work in math education.
And what about parents? How can they support their children's math learning?
Talk to your children's teachers about the approaches they're using in the classroom. Explore math learning apps and games together.
Uh-huh.
Encourage your children to see math in the world around them. And most importantly, foster a positive attitude towards math in your own home.
You know, it really comes down to creating a culture of math positivity,
Yes.
both at school and at home. And I think this website and this workshop that it describes offer a really fantastic starting point.
I agree. They've curated a wealth of resources and ideas that can really inspire and empower educators, parents, and students alike.
As we've been talking, I've been thinking about those lists of other resources on the website. You know, those natural fit tools, those collaboration platforms, those formative assessment tools.
Right.
There's so much to explore. I'm kind of feeling a little overwhelmed, to be honest.
I understand. It can be a lot to take in.
Mm.
But remember, you don't have to do it all at once.
Yeah.
Start by picking one or two resources that really pique your interest and dive in. Explore, experiment, see what works for you and your students.
That's good advice. It's about taking those small steps and gradually building your confidence in your toolkit.
Exactly. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. There's a whole community of educators and innovators out there
Yeah.
who are eager to support you and share their expertise.
Well, on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of ground, from those specific features of customizable math apps to those broader trends that are shaping the future of math education.
We have.
But there's still so much more to explore.
There is, and I'm excited to continue our conversation in the next part of our deep dive.
You know, as we've been talking about these customizable math apps and really this whole movement that's behind them,
Right.
it seems like there's a real shift happening in how we think about teaching math.
It's a move away from that traditional one-size-fits-all model that, so many of us grew up with.
Yeah.
And instead, we're seeing a much greater emphasis on, those personalized learning experiences.
And it seems like these apps are really at the forefront of that shift.
I think so.
You know, they're not just delivering content, they're actually giving teachers the power to shape those learning experiences to fit the needs of their students.
Think about it this way. You wouldn't expect all students to learn to read at the same pace or in the same way, right? Right?
So why should we expect that for math?
Yeah, that's a good point.
These apps allow teachers to adjust the difficulty level, the types of problems, even the pace of instruction, all to match the unique learning styles of each student.
It makes you wonder, though, what does this mean for the role of the teacher? Are they becoming less of an instructor and more of a facilitator?
That's a really interesting question, and I think the answer is nuanced. You know, the role of the teacher is certainly evolving, but it's not about becoming less important. In fact, I would argue that the teacher becomes even more crucial in this new landscape.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How so?
Well, think about it. These customizable apps give teachers an incredible amount of flexibility and control.
Right.
But that also means that they need to have a really deep understanding of both the technology and the pedagogy to use these tools effectively.
Okay.
They need to be able to assess their students' needs, select the right apps and resources, and customize them in a way that supports their learning goals. So they're not just teaching math, they're also becoming experts in educational technology and personalized learning.
In a way, yes.
Hmm.
They're becoming designers of learning experiences, curators of resources, and facilitators of collaboration.
Hmm,
It's a much more demanding role, but I also think it's a much more rewarding one.
I can see that. And it kind of speaks to that idea we were talking about earlier about building a community of practice.
Yes.
Teachers really need that support and guidance as they're navigating this new terrain.
Absolutely.
Sure.
They need to be able to share ideas, to troubleshoot challenges, and learn from each other's experiences. That's where those online forums, those professional development workshops, and those conferences really come in.
It's like they're creating this collective intelligence around math education,
Yeah.
pooling all their knowledge and expertise to benefit everyone.
Exactly. And that's what's so exciting about this movement.
Hmm.
It's not just about individual teachers using cool apps.
Yeah.
It's about a collective effort to transform math learning for the better.
As we're talking about the evolving role of the teacher, it makes me think about the role of the student as well.
Yeah.
How are these customizable apps changing the way students learn math?
Well, they're empowering students to take ownership of their learning.
Mm-hmm.
Remember we talked about those hands-on, inquiry-based activities?
Uh-huh.
Those are all about encouraging students to actively explore, experiment, and make discoveries on their own.
So it's less about passively absorbing information from a textbook or a lecture,
Right.
and more about actively constructing their own understanding.
Exactly. And these apps provide the perfect platform for that kind of active learning.
Yeah.
They offer immediate feedback, they allow students to try different approaches, and they help them to visualize those abstract concepts in a way that makes sense to them.
It sounds like it takes the fear out of making mistakes.
Yeah.
You can experiment and explore without the pressure of getting it right the first time.
Exactly. And that's so crucial for building confidence and fostering a love of learning. When students aren't afraid to make mistakes, they're more likely to take risks, try new things, and persevere when they encounter challenges.
It kind of creates a growth mindset around math,
Yeah.
which is something that so many students struggle with.
Absolutely. And that's where I think these customizable apps have the potential to make a real difference. They can help to shift those negative perceptions of math and create a much more positive and empowering learning experience for all students.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've explored the features of these customizable math apps, the pedagogical principles behind them, the evolving roles of teachers and students, and the exciting possibilities they hold for the future of math education. What's the one key takeaway that you would like to leave our listeners with?
I think the biggest takeaway is this math doesn't have to be a source of anxiety or frustration.
Hmm.
It can be a source of joy, discovery, and empowerment. And these customizable apps, along with the movement behind them, are helping to make that vision a reality.
I love that. And for our listeners, if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, don't be afraid to explore further. Check out some of the resources mentioned on the website. Try out a few apps, connect with other educators who are passionate about transforming math learning.
Remember, this is just the beginning of a very exciting journey,
That's right.
and we can't wait to see what the future holds for math education.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another exploration into the world of knowledge and ideas.